Hi, this is Brantley, and welcome to Giving Great Presentations. Today we are talking about the hook. Now, the hook is one of the first things that the listener will hear in a presentation, but it's actually one of the last things that you will create and add to your presentation. Let's talk about several things you need to know about the hook. The hook should always be interesting. If it's not interesting, it's not a hook. Your hook should be brief. Your hook is not the topic, but it connects to the topic. Your hook is like a hand that points to your thesis or a hand that points to your topic. The hook has the purpose of grabbing the listener, grabbing the audience, and pulling them in. Today, we are going to be looking at 10 examples of 10 different types of hooks. We are going to use the same thesis for all of these hooks. As we've said before, the thesis is the most important sentence in your presentation because the thesis tells exactly what your presentation is about. If you need help creating a thesis, there are other videos in this series that will tell you how to do that. Our thesis that we're going to use, that's an example for all of these 10 hooks, is this. You can maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. Okay, let's look at our examples. So for our types of hooks, let's look at number 1. Number 1 is ask a series of questions. When you use a series of questions, use more than one question to get your listener to think about your topic. Here's the example. Do you live in a small house or apartment? Do you feel like the walls are closing in on you? Does the space seem to get smaller and smaller every day? What can you do about it? Well, you can maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. Let's look at example number 2. Number 2 is to present a problem. When we use this type of hook, the hook presents a problem and the thesis is the solution for that problem. Here's the example. My friend Erica just got a new job in Japan. She's very excited, but when she started hunting for apartments, she realized that she'll have to move from a 1,500 square foot home to one that isn't even 500 square feet. That's a very big change. A change from a large apartment like this to a small apartment can be very difficult. If you find yourself with this kind of problem, you can maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. Let's look at hook example number 3. That's use a proverb or quote. When we use a proverb, we want to connect it with our thesis. And here's one way that we can do that. So we use a well-known proverb and we add a twist. Here's an example. They say home is where you hang your hat. But what if your home is not big enough to hang a hat? Sometimes we may have to live in smaller spaces than we wish. So what do we do then? Well, you can maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. Let's look at example number 4 for hooks. Arouse curiosity or build suspense. In this type of hook, we don't want to mention the thesis or the topic until we get close to the end of the hook. We want the reader to be in suspense. Here's the example. There's a new trend these days in America. Young people are doing something crazy that their parents would never have dreamed of doing, not in a million years. And they aren't doing this because they lack money either. What some young people are doing today is they're choosing to move from larger spaces into very small homes. Now, if you move from a large space into a small home, you need to learn to maximize your space. And you can maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. For our number 5 example, we're going to look at telling a story. Now, you can tell a story from your own life or from history or from culture. The example here, I'm going to tell a story from my own life. Here's the example. For 7 years, I lived in Taipei City. Part of the time I was there, I lived with roommates, but later I decided that I wanted to live alone. In order to live alone, I had to live in a much smaller apartment, but I didn't want to give up my space. I had to learn to live in a smaller space, and I had to learn to work with that space. Now, you too can learn to maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. For our next example, we are going to look at giving background information. Now, for number 6 here, we are going to give simple background information on interior design. Interior designers have the job of shaping how we experience space. Through their choices of color, texture, and materials, they can actually change our perceptions. You can use these tools yourself. You can maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. For example number 7, we're going to look at simple facts or statistics. Between 2005 and 2017, the cost of living in New York rose twice as fast as income. Many people in large cities were forced to live in smaller spaces. This is even more true today. If you find yourself forced to live in a smaller space, then you can maximize home in your small space by following these 5 interior design rules. For number 8, we are going to use a technique that starts by using the words imagine or what if. So here we guide our audience by using these words. Here's the example. What if you had to move from your current home to somewhere smaller? Imagine that instead of having the closet space that you have now, that your home had even less room for storage. Well, you can maximize that space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. Our next example, number 9, is called playing the contrarian. If we play the contrarian, we introduce the opposite idea from our thesis for our hook. Here's the example. Bigger is better. A home should be large with plenty of space to put all of your things in and more. But unfortunately, that isn't always the case. Now, if you live in a smaller space, you can maximize the space of your small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. Our final type of hook, number 10, is called a misdirect. Now, a misdirect is a really fun hook, but it's kind of a gimmick. You should probably avoid this hook in most situations. It can be used for a very funny effect. It's very good for comedy, but it can make your audience feel cheated. And I'll talk a little bit more about it after the example. Here's the example. Everyone wants to win the lottery. Can you imagine winning $1 million and all the things that you would do with the money? Wouldn't you like to know how to win the lottery? Well, that's too bad because I'm not going to talk about the lottery today. I'm going to tell you how you can maximize space in a small home if you follow these 5 interior design rules. Okay, so you see how that hook changes the topic. I misdirect the listener. I tell them one topic and I completely change the topic for my thesis. This hook feels like cheating the audience, and so sometimes for a serious presentation, this is not a very good hook to use. This can only be used in very silly situations, so it is one to be avoided. Okay, let's review. Hooks. Your hook must be interesting, and if it's not interesting, it's not a hook. The purpose of the hook is to catch the audience's attention. Again, with your hook, I want to emphasize that your hook is one of the first things that the audience hears, but it's actually one of the last things that you'll create. There are many different types of hooks that you can use, and here are the examples that we gave today. Ask a series of questions. Present a problem. Use a proverb or quote. Arouse curiosity or build suspense. Tell a story. Give background information. Share facts or statistics. begin with imagine or what if, play the contrarian, and finally misdirect. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation on hooks. There will be a few more presentations on how to give a great presentation. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have any questions, please ask those in the comments, and thank you very much.